Hi everyone, Jeffrey with Treeline Solutions here for another session of practical tips and techniques for IBMi Modernization. In today's session, we're going to install the DB2 for I sample database on the IBMi. Let's cover a quick synopsis of today's video. We're going to cover what the DB2 for I sample database is. The reason that we created this video is that in the future, many of our videos will use the sample database as a reference for the code that we'll include in the videos. We're going to cover installing the sample database. It's a real quick command call. And we have a special treat. We're going to actually use a tool called DBSchema, which is a free tool that will allow you to go visual with your database design, development, documentation, and deployment on the IBMi. And of course, JTOPEN, which will give us the connection capabilities with DBSchema. Couple of important links to remember. The DBSchema.com website where we can download the tool, and the JTOPEN site, which is of course sourceforge.net. In creating the SQL collection on the IBMi, it's a simple stored procedure that IBM provides. It can be called from any SQL interface. We're going to actually use client access, ACS, to do that today. So let's go ahead and flip over to that. So let's jump over to ACS, and we're going to select Run SQL Scripts. And remember, we have to, when we issue this command, it is a call to an SQL stored procedure. So if you go to Q command or a command line and try and execute this command, you will get an error. So just be sure that you're in an SQL interface. And then we just simply run the command. And this will take a little bit, but it's installing a library, a collection on the IBMi. I'm going to jump over to my Visual Studio Code. I wanted to show everybody something really neat. I do all my development on the IBMi as far as source code using Visual Studio Code. So there is a mechanism to connect to your IBMi, access the IFS, actually access the source physical files in your libraries. It may be a viable alternative for your company. I would encourage you to look out for one of our future videos which will cover this topic, using visual code to develop on your IBMi. But for now, we're just going to go into the object browser, and we're going to bring in the library that was created, the SQL collection. It's just a library name sample in the IBMi terms. So we'll open that up. And as you can see, we've got quite a bit that was created there. Because it's an SQL collection, you'll have your system files. The IBMi maintains one at the QSys level, but it also maintains, when you create an actual collection within a library, its own files that describe the database. And you can see there's files, there's views. I would encourage you to jump in and take a look at the examples and learn from them. One of the neat things about creating an SQL collection is that journals are automatically applied to every table within the collection. Again, I would hope that you'd look out for our future video regarding this topic, but for now, let's continue. So now that we have an SQL collection, a native SQL collection to work with on the IBMi, we can start introducing some of the more modern tools to utilize with that. What is DBSchema? Well, it's simply a free tool that allows you to visually design, document, and deploy SQL databases. They have a free version, and they also have a pro version that has some advanced functionality. If you find a use for it, you can always upgrade. So the idea of using tools like this, again, once we have that native SQL layer on the IBMi, we can get out of the code, we can get out of the green screen and into the real world concepts. And that's where we can take advantage of many of these modern ecosystems. The other neat thing is there's no need to be an SQL expert when you're using DBSchema. You can create new tables, columns, foreign keys. You can explore data from multiple tables. It's really an exciting tool. I encourage everyone to follow up on it. I do believe that most of the shops out there will find a use for this. And anything that gets us into the modern moves us closer to being able to grab some of the powerful methodologies that are used in the modern ecosystems to quickly deploy and modify and iteratively enhance solutions. The other neat thing about having a native SQL layer on the IBMi, DB2 is supported by most of the tools that are out there in the modern. Just keep in mind you need JTOPEN for most of them, and we'll go through that today, how you can utilize JTOPEN. But DBSchema supports all the relational and NoSQL databases, if you're familiar with what those are. If you're not, don't worry, we'll be covering those in a video in the future here. But we have MySQL, we have SQLite, Microsoft SQL Server, MongoDB, which I would recommend anybody on the IBMi to investigate the capabilities of MongoDB. MariaDB, which actually runs on the IBMi. It's actually the replacement for MySQL. So let's continue. DBSchema also allows you to design and deploy schemas in a team environment. The model within DBSchema is independent of the database, meaning that once you design a database, you can port it to the IBMi, but you can also port it to any of the other supported platforms by the tool. There's a model. The model file can be shared by a team using Git for source control. So again, it's moving you more into the modern capabilities with what used to be just a green screen code line by line thing on the IBMi. You can deploy the model on multiple databases. We can create a database and deploy it in DB2 on the IBMi. We can also deploy it in MongoDB. We can deploy that on an SQL server. So it really gives you the flexibility to move independently between the different platforms. And there are virtual foreign keys, which I think is my favorite. It's probably one of the reasons why I decided to share this with everyone. A foreign key is basically within the model you can define key relationships that don't actually get implemented in the database, which is great when you're using legacy files and you don't have a relationship but you want one in the model. This tool will enable you to do that. So another benefit of the tool is it will help you model some of your DDS type files into a more native SQL type format. You can import data into any of the databases supported by DBSchema, which is great because usually we'll get a CSV in IT and we'll have to upload it, but now we have a tool that will enable us to do that very quickly. So let's head over to the DBSchema website, and a standard website. The download for the free version is right off the front page. But before we do that, let's go take a click on the additions. And what you'll get is a comparison between the free version and the pro version. So it's always a good idea to come and look and see what you're missing by not upgrading to the pro. And there's a lot of tools out there that follow this model. You'll have a free version so you can get your feet wet, and if you really like the tool and you find a use for it in your organization, you can then purchase the pro version with the more advanced features. I always try and when I'm evaluating tools, the first level is to look for ones who do have this model, because it is such an efficient way to get it into your hands, to play with it, and then evaluate it. So I would encourage everyone to come in here and take a look at the differences between the two. So let's just go back to the home page. There are support. There's even a blog. There's some video tutorials. You know, a lot of the modern tools these days, they have all of the video tutorials and things that really help you learn their tools in an accelerated fashion. So we're going to go ahead and download DBSchema. And I'm running Windows. If you select the appropriate platform for what you're looking for. So we'll just go ahead and download this. So we'll open the installer, let it extract. Now I already have DBSchema installed on my system, so I'll get the upgrade message. So if not, you can install multiple copies, or just take the default if nothing's installed. I'm going to go ahead and update my existing. You can associate files. So we'll go ahead and let it install. So it'll uninstall the previous version, install the new one, and we'll go ahead and run it. So before we jump into DBSchema and get the connection going, we need to do one more thing. We need to go out to SourceForge and download JTOPEN. If you've already have this downloaded to your system, you don't need to worry about it, but the JTOPEN will provide the Java classes that will enable DBSchema to connect to the IBMi. So we're going to go ahead and download, and then we'll open. Now normally you can extract this anywhere. Normally I just put it out on the C drive right at the root or off the root. So it's easy to find. Just remember where you save it. You'll have to tell DBSchema to where to go to actually grab the JTOPEN jar file. So we'll just go ahead and switch this to the root and simply extract it. There we go. We're all set. Now let's jump into DBSchema. So let's jump into DBSchema. Now the idea here is that we're just going to get this connected, show you how to get connected to your IBMi. And, you know, as Albert Einstein once said, experience is the only true source of knowledge. So the idea is that once you get connected, feel free to go in and play around and, you know, kick the tires. And there are tutorials available, sample models, video tutorials. So I would encourage you to jump in and learn by experience. So for now, we're just going to get connected to the IBMi. And again, we support many different databases. We're going to select DB2. And if you notice, DBSchema downloads a driver. Unfortunately, it's not the driver we need to connect to the IBMi, so we have to take another step and actually bring in the JTOPEN driver. So let's go over to Manage Drivers and select, let me bring this up here a little bit, and go to the upload, and then where your JTOPEN is, I've already got this set because I pulled this in with 10.5. I know we downloaded 10.6, but you could use either. Best always to use the most current. So we went in and it uploaded it and brought it in. Now the URL to connect, or the URI, is simply the IP address of your IBMi and the name of the SQL collection or the library on your IBMi. So once we do that, you use your standard IBMi user ID and password at this point. Let's move this up here so we can see it. And we just hit connect. So now we've connected to the IBMi and we have a list of libraries. Now I have this blurred out because I don't want to expose any proprietary information, but you're looking for the library named sample. And let's go down to the S's, and once you find that, select it. It's going to bring in all of the information. But basically now, instead of doing display file description, display file field description, or select from sys columns, we have a visual graphical display of the database and all its relationships. You can go in there, you can see the columns, the foreign keys, you can look at information. Let's pull this out a little bit. You can come in and look at some of the details, you can make changes to it, and then deploy it. And the neat thing about SQL is you can pretty much add columns on the fly with the alter table command without having to recompile all your programs, being that they're SQL based. So it really gives us a leg up with the development with the ability to have a more fluid database. But this is great because now we've moved into the conceptual, right? We're starting to deal with concepts rather than lines of code. And in this environment, when you engage with the business side, it's much easier to talk business concepts than it is lines of code and program. So this tool is really I believe where IBMi shops need to be putting their attentions as far as the tools that they utilize to support the business. Hi everyone, Jeffrey with Treeline Solutions again. I'd like to thank you for joining us today. We hope that you look for our additional videos in the future. And if you want any more information about Treeline Solutions and our services, please visit our website. Take care. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.